And welcome back. Up to this point, we have done a whole bunch of different sprite work where we have done sprites of different sizes, anything from where we started all the way down at 8x8, all the way up to a much more larger images. We have done sprite sheets, we've done animations, but today we're actually going to take a step back and try to add a little bit more texture and flavor as we start introducing some of those different things into our pixel art. So let's go ahead and today, for our purposes, start with a smaller image. Let's actually scale it back down to 32 by 32 today, and go ahead and make sure it's transparent, no artboards. Click Create, Control 0 to zoom in. And again, we're going to start smaller here today, just because we want to go ahead and just refine our techniques a little bit before we go ahead and jump into making anything super complicated. So what we're going to do is we're going to make today just a wooden crate, something pretty simple in theory, because it's just a box, right? So let's actually use our rectangular marquee tool here to go ahead and create a box. So if we click and select this, one of the things you'll notice is as I do it, you can see I have my pixels and width and height showing up here, and I'm holding down the shift key so that they retain the same dimensions here. All right, and you can of course resize this to different things. Let's just go ahead and do a 20 by 20 box here. And so I have a 20 by 20 selection here, and I can then go ahead and change to my fill bucket tool. So here's my paint bucket right here. And since we know this is a wood box, let's go ahead and try to find something that's a little more brown. So we have to come up a little bit here, maybe to the oranges a little bit, and try to find a kind of a brown tone to start with. So this right here looks pretty good. And I'm just gonna click OK and fill that in. And so now, of course, I have the start to my box. I use my move tool now just to move that over, kind of get a little bit more centered in my image here. And this is, of course, the start to it. Now, we want to make this a little bit more three-dimensional. So I'm going to just use Control D to deselect. And you'll notice that there's, right now, we're looking straight on the box. We don't have anything kind of really to show like the top or anything like that. So I'm actually going to go ahead and try to make the top of this box here just by go ahead and going up and over with a different tone. So I'm going to go double click my colors here, and let's actually just move up a little bit here in our color section. Maybe slide up a little bit into the yellow area a little bit, maybe not too much, but just so we got kind of a bit of a warmer color, maybe showing where some sunlight or something is coming in, and click OK. And then let's just go ahead and use our good old pencil tool here, bring that brush size down, and I'm just going to go ahead and click using Shift to make some straight lines here. And this, of course, is representing now the top of my box. Now, of course, I can add a little bit more character to this. For example, you notice that this area is still kind of transparent, and that's because I want to have this represent the top. So I'm actually going to use my eyedropper tool, get that original color back, switch back to my brush tool, and fill that in. And now we're starting to see a little bit of dimension come in here. And so we're starting to see things actually start to pop out of this box here, just a little bit. So let's add some stuff here to the front of the box to kind of simulate maybe some wood plats that are growing across the top of this, maybe some different structures that are holding this crate together. Now, in this box here, let's say the inside of this box is a little bit darker. So let's go ahead and change this, because maybe this is, again, with those wood plats. So I'm actually going to move down a little bit in color here and get that kind of a darker tone, maybe and slide it down to the reds a little bit just to get some real nice dark hue. And let's go ahead and make ourselves a box of the inside of this. So I'm just going to go ahead and select this. And then I can fill this in. And if I'm not happy with how dark this is, I can always change that later. And I might look, that could be a little darker. So I'm just going to go ahead, go back, and maybe drag that cursor down just a little bit more here. And that looks pretty good there. So now we have the start of the front of our box. Now, of course, if we just leave it like this is the good start, but we want to add texture. We want to start adding different things in here. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to my pencil tool here, and I'm actually going to go ahead and try to get this same color that here. So let's just quickly grab our eyedropper, grab that outside color, go back to brush, and I'm going to go ahead and let's go ahead and just take a diagonal through here. So I'm just going to click, hold down the shift key, click. And actually, let's create that just a little bit wider here, just to give it a little bit more dimension. So I'm actually going to go up one and down at each side. And let's repeat that then for the other diagonal as well. So let's go ahead and go across that side. and just to widen this up, and you can start seeing how we're starting to get some shape in here. And of course, as I'm starting to fill this in, I'm starting to feel also like some of these color tones may match. Like this might be too light. That's okay, because we can again always just grab like our eyedropper tool, go back to here, and we can of course change these colors a little bit to something that we feel might be more representative. It's very easy to go ahead and change those, and that actually looks a little bit more in tone with what we're looking for. Now I do of course want to add like some drop shadow, for example, in here, and those are going to be probably my darkest tones. So let's go ahead and actually use our eyedropper tool again, grab this dark color that we have, double click, and let's go ahead and just drag that way down here, alright? Almost into the black, but let's also slide it a little bit more kind of towards that red region too, because we want to have it nice and dark, and because again, that's the shadow area. So I'm going to go back to my pencil tool, and let's go ahead and just put that in these top zones here. So this is the area where the light is not hitting. So for example, we have the light shine down directly from above. This is the area where you're not going to see any light hitting on that box. And let's just fill in a couple of these other regions here just to kind of help simulate some of that shadow, because again, it's all coming down from above. Alright, we can start seeing we're starting to get some good texture here, starting to get some good different features of things that are starting to pop out, but we can add a little bit more into this image. Now we want to go ahead and add some shadow to these areas here as well, but rather than go ahead and guessing like we've done in the past, we're actually going to use a little Photoshop trick here to kind of help us. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to keep this dark color that I have here for my drop shadow, and I'm actually going to change the opacity here from 100% down to 50%. And so I can just go ahead and click up here and drag that cursor down to 50%. It doesn't have to be precise. If you want to, you can. And then of course we can go ahead and start filling in those zones there with that. But you notice though that is a 50% opacity, and that's not quite what we want to do. So I'm just actually going to fill a cell or two in here, use my eyedropper tool to get that color. And now that it has that color stored as that new color, I can switch back to my pencil tool, drag that back up to 100%. And now if I click and fill in these zones, you'll see that it is a different color than what we have up here. And I can actually then use my eyedropper tool to pretty much fill back in this original color. And I can use this semi-darker color now to get the rest of these zones here that I didn't have before. And you can see it gives us kind of a much more natural transition than if I had just gone inside and picked something. Because before, that's kind of what we did. We just said, like, oh, this color looks close enough. But we want to go ahead and try to start getting some of these color zones in here where things are going to start filling in. And you can see already we're starting to get some good dimension here, starting to get some good characteristics to this shape here. Now, if you remember, this is the top of our crate here. And we said the sun is kind of coming down from above, which means there are going to be pieces of this crate that are kind of sticking out that might be getting some sunlight. So let's use our eyedropper tool again to go ahead and grab that color that we originally had here. And we want to go ahead and paint a couple areas here on our crate that are representing some of those zones where the sun actually might be giving some sunlight to. Alright, and so now we got some nice good zones set up here. We can see how our box is really starting to come together. But let's just add a little bit, one last finishing detail here, because of course this is not a magical box. You know, this box has to be held together by something. So let's go ahead and just use some nails here. So let's just go ahead and switch to more of a blue tone here. I'm actually going to drag this a little bit more down because we want kind of a steely blue. And that looks pretty good there. But we also want dark because remember it's metal. So I'm going to click OK. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to go here to these corners here and just go ahead and put one of my nails here in each one of these corners that I have to kind of help hold this whole thing together. Alright, and you can see that's all starting to come together pretty nicely here. We, of course, have done a lot of different pieces here with texture here to kind of give this some different flavor. Now, of course, I could do things like, hey, you know, maybe I want this edge to be a little bit more defined. Maybe I don't want it to be, you know, this, you know, hard edge here. Maybe or this soft edge. Maybe I want it to have like a nice box around this. You know, these are things that we can start debating about, you know, what we want to do when we start talking about our pixel art. So, for example, if I do this and start doing this with my shape, you know, does this change how this pixel art is representing what I'm working on? You know, it does give us some nice crisp edges. So these are things for us all to think about when we start working on our pixel art. But next time when we come back, we're going to do a couple more things here with this box to see if we can take that to the next level and we can add continuing to more things to really help add to our pixel art, so it's not simply just some flat static image that we might think looks good, but how can we make it better?